Good morning. My name is Andy Gustafson. I teach business ethics and society at Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska, the home of Warren Buffett. And I am very happy to be here today. I got the invitation from Father Kuru, and Father Kuru, I'm very grateful for your friendship and for your asking me to come and be one small participant in this great conference that you're putting on there at Xavier. So I was intrigued by the title, Enabling Social and Business Responsibility in Our Globalized World. I think that the impact of business upon society is greater than anything else. And so we need to think seriously about how can we in business affect society for the good. And given the theme of the conference and then also the topics that you're covering, I'm very excited about what's going to go on there. I wish I could be with you. I'm sure it's much warmer there than it is here. We just got 12 inches of snow. And I would love to be with you all and hear the presentations that will go on at your conference. So I wish you all the best there. The theme of the conference has these ethical topics, as I understand it: exploitation of labor, corporate misconduct, violation of human rights, financial crisis of 2008, climate change, resource scarcity, social inequality, and finally, integrity, complete transparency, and unswerving commitment for the welfare of all stakeholders. These are excellent topics for us to be considering in this day and age. There's also some hopeful themes of the conference, desires of the conference to help bring about cultivation of responsible leadership, very important. Pursuit of sustainable development, essential these days. To discover ethical implications of emerging technologies. This is a concern dear to my heart. I'm teaching a class right now on social media, AI, and the meaning of life, because they do affect that. A pressing need for conscious capitalism. This is being talked about very much these days, and it is important. Collectively commit to fostering business environment where ethical considerations and responsibilities are not merely optional add-ons. We sometimes think of ethics as frosting on the cake if we can get there. But instead, we should think about ethics as the flour in the dough that makes the entire thing work. And so we need to change people's attitudes about ethics, that it's not an add-on, it's essential at the very core of a business, like the blood in one's body. The bloodstream beliefs are what make the whole thing go. Finally, that business develop deeply ingrained core values and bolster the contributions to the well-being of society as a whole and to each stakeholder. I think these are fantastic goals for this conference, and I hope that the various presentations will lead to these coming true. So as I see it, one of the biggest problems for business is that we have value-free business. We're only concerned about profit and not concerned about anything else. Frank Knight, one of my favorite economists, was at the Chicago School. He was a teacher of Milton Friedman. And he talked about the meaninglessness and emptiness of purpose, which haunts so much of business practices in a funny way. He put it this way, being from the Midwest, where there's a lot of farming that happens. He said, whatever our philosophy of human motives, we must face the fact that men do raise more corn to feed more hogs, to buy more land, to raise more corn, to feed more hogs, to buy more land. And in business, generally produce wealth to be used in producing more wealth with no view to any use beyond the increase of wealth itself. Why are you growing your business? So I can make more money. Why? So I can grow my business more. Why? So I can make more money. And this is the cycle that we get into without thinking about, why am I making this money? What am I doing with it? How are we doing good in society through the way that we practice our businesses in the first place? So these are concerns for us to consider. And I want us to just reflect for the short time we have here on a transformational view of business. How could we think about business differently? Because honestly, all of us come to the table with values. Where should these ethics and values come from? Most of us already come to the table with them from different perspectives, of course. I know that you're in a very rich part of India that has very different kinds of perspectives brought together in unity. Rich personal values that come in the Jesuit school there, men and women for others, agents of change, all for God's glory, care for the whole person. That's Jesuit values through and through. Catholic values, more specifically Catholic social thought, of dignity of everyone, pursue the common good, solidarity, preference for the poor, economic justice, rights and responsibilities. And these all are very good Catholic values, but they're values that most people, whether Catholic or not, can get behind. And I see that in myself. I'm not Hindu, but I certainly can get behind the general Hindu values of truth, kindness, austerity, purity, forbearance, control of mind and senses, compassion, contentment, detachment, and devotion to the Supreme Lord. These are values I can support very much. And Muslim values as well. For my Muslim friends, kindness, charity, forgiveness, honesty, patience, justice, respecting parents and elders, keeping promises, controlling one's anger, and love of God. So we all come with our personal values. The problem is we often feel like business interests are at odds with our values. We're competing. The business values are here and our personal values are here. But how can we bring these together and integrate them? Often we think of the market as being impersonal, that it is simply us doing whatever's in our own best interest. This comes from Adam Smith especially. There is no intention. We just do what's in our own interest and then everyone gets helped. The butcher, the brewer, and the baker each pursue their own interests, not trying to help others, but they happen to help others as they make bread for us and beer for us, and they make meat for us. And so yet that exchange improves the condition of both. So that said, thanks to a form of cooperation that requires no joint action, no concern for others, actually. But the problem here is that the total good then becomes a sum of private interests of reciprocally immune individuals who cooperate without meeting, touching, or looking at each other. Do we want this kind of immune economic model for ourselves? Wouldn't we rather have something more communal, where we are concerned for other human beings? Frank Knight, again, has a great article where he talks about why business is such a lousy game. If you knew what the rules were ahead of time, you probably wouldn't even want to play it. But these are some of the problems. Economic success is frequently unrelated to ability. We see this all the time, right? Luck is frequently more important than capacity or effort. Those who get lucky early typically maintain their dominance. The big companies are the ones who started first, more often than not. The weak face strong, typically with no assistance. Heredity and social connections give huge advantages to the few over the many. The game seems to compound advantages for the advantaged, and vice versa. Those who come without advantage have even less by the time the game's over. Businessmen typically do not display noble minds or sensitive spirits or sportsmanship. In a social order where all values are reduced to the measure of money, many of the most noble and sensitive characters will lead unhappy lives with such a measuring stick of success. Economic production is a sport for the leaders, but mechanical drudgery for the rank and file. And finally, with the dominance of salesmanship and consumerism, there is inevitably a devaluing of free goods, which are not acquired as an object of consumption. We don't need money for those goods, but then we don't care about them in this crazy game of business that we participate in. So how can we maybe change the rules of business or modify them? As being business players, we are in business, we are doing business. How can we help change those rules? Pope Francis gave a talk to some businessmen at the Vatican a few years ago in 2017. And he said, we must not care only for the victims of the system, but build a system where there are fewer victims. We must work toward changing the rules of the game of the socioeconomic system. And he was talking to businessmen. How can we do that? We continue to compete according to the rules of the game would be for us to seek to acquire more and more, to beat our competition and to win at the expense of others. But instead of that, instead of just doing business as normal, why not use our power and wealth to leverage it for the common good, particularly for those who are in need? So I want to share a transformational business model that brings in some different pieces from thinkers I've looked at. And I think it might give you some encouragement. Maybe it'll give you some inspiration for ways that we might change our own business practices. So I'll go through each of these in turn briefly. First, business experienced as a life-giving, meaningful practice. Oftentimes our business practices are not what necessarily give us meaning. We maybe have values, as we talked about before, but we try to apply those to business. It doesn't always work. But if we could start to integrate these things together, look for meaning in business. Business starts to give us our meaning because we are trying to use our values in business itself. So it can begin to be a healthy circle where my values are being shared in business and displayed in business. Then business, as I practice it, encourages me and builds me up spiritually and intellectually and ethically even. So the Pope Francis said here, business is not only incapable of destroying communion among people, it can edify it, it can promote it. With your life, you demonstrate that economy and communion become more beautiful when they're beside each other. Certainly the economy is more beautiful, but communion is also more beautiful because the spiritual communion of hearts is even fuller when it becomes a communion of goods, talents, and profits. A great quote there. Second, can we transform so we have business beyond just charity, not just make a bunch of money and then give some of it to charity? Capitalism knows philanthropy, but not communion. It's simple to give a part of the profits without embracing and touching the people who receive those crumbs. In the logic of the gospel, if one does not give all of himself, he never gives enough of himself, said Pope Francis. So, how can we humanize the economy? Not simply charity or sharing a little bit of money. It's a vision of using business to help provide jobs, build community, help people intentionally through private enterprise, not just financially, but in terms of community, dignity, respect, fellowship, even through the practices of business, not just through its profits. We can help bring about communion with others. A third thing I want to share briefly is if we do help with poverty, it's not just financial poverty. We eliminate the many forms of poverty through business activity. We think of monetary poverty because that's the one we always talk about, but there's also poverty of community. We in business can help alleviate that by helping people come into communion with each other through business. You get a job. They start to be part of that business of the business culture that you have going on there. There's a poverty of community we can overcome. There's work poverty. People need jobs. We want to work. We want to have projects, complete them, have pride in our work. So giving people jobs is a way that we eliminate that kind of poverty. When people get a job and they start to have community, they start to have more of a sense of identity. What do you do? Oh, I work at this company. That gives them a sense of purpose and meaning that they didn't have when they didn't have employment, when they weren't part of that community. Existential poverty. This is something else we can eliminate. People wonder, why am I here if they don't have a job and they can't provide for their family? But once they have those things, they start to have a sense of, oh, I have a purpose in my life. And that leads to the fifth one, spiritual poverty. People often, if they don't have a job, they don't have a means to provide for their family, they don't have a community, they have a sense of, God isn't here. There is no providence in my life looking out for me, helping my life to go well. But once those things fall in place, I've seen it with my own workers that spiritual poverty is overcome. They start to have a sense of providence looking out for them, of God loving them. Fourth, beyond CSR. CSR is great, but what can we do beyond that? Not just aspiring to change our businesses to be a little better, but to transform society. Rather than concentrating on the need to make business more ethical or more humane, we want to do that, of course, but how can we do our part to build a more just world? One where fewer people are forced to live in often inhumane conditions. Let's do more than CSR, not just renew business, but renew social relations themselves through our business practices. Let us help create a society that's more civil due to the fact that we are directly involved in combating poverty while being not only a productive structure, but promoting new humanistic management. That's an inspiring quote to me. How can we transform society through business? Economy of gift and love. This is a strange topic for economists. Mainstream economic science has been skeptical of behavior motivated by the love of others, dismissed it as inefficient. Economics is focused on the sphere of human life in which love can be avoided, considers the more the market is able to cut down on love, the more efficient it will be. So get rid of love to be more efficient. But then there are people who try to share love in their business. This is one of my favorite men, John Mundell, an entrepreneur I know here in the United States. He says, joy, this is a gift our business practices can give. It's the happiness, well-being, and deep satisfaction that comes from living a meaningful life, integrated with our most heartfelt beliefs, resulting from relationships that grow out of this giving and receiving. So how can we integrate our own personal beliefs and dreams and hopes into our business practices so that we can live them out through business? Business shouldn't merely be a matter of being generous, of giving to charity. It should be that, but it should be more. It isn't philanthropy or merely a way of providing assistance. It has to do with acknowledging and living the dimension of giving and giving of oneself essential to one's own existence through business, right? It's an exciting way to think about business. Maybe here we're talking about free markets now, not socialism, but we can choose to redistribute wealth for the common good. Private business can freely choose to use their business activities and wealth to contribute to the common good and intentionally help others to flourish, in part by redistribution of goods and wealth by exercising a preferential option for the poor. How can we find ways to give the poor employment, for example? There is a way that this is sustainable for businesses, and it can give a contribution to correct for the unjust and wrong distribution of goods and give back meaning to economic practice and culture. Andrigo, one of my favorite economists from Italy. And this has to do with going beyond just merit. In business, if somebody doesn't do their job, we fire them. Very unforgiving, right? When in business do you hear about forgiveness, about mercy, about grace, about giving a second chance, a third chance, even a fourth chance? So how can we in business, it's messy, right, when we do this, but how can we help those who need our help? We need to be able to figure out how to be forgiving in business, how to be merciful, how to be gracious. And when we start to practice business in that way, we will feel better about how we practice business. Others will feel better about business, and business will become more beautiful. So we need to get beyond merit. We need some merit judgments, of course, but how can we go beyond that as well? So business can be a place of authentic encounter with others. And that's what we want. That's what we aspire for. Personal costs come when we in business choose to not distance ourselves from others, no doubt, but to be authentically involved in the lives of those we encounter through business. Modern economics has traditionally encouraged distance from others. It's just business, it's nothing personal. But how can we go beyond that? And we will get wounded if we do that, but we will also experience more joy. Because with the way that we often do business, from this joyless human condition, it's a result of the great illusion that the market provide an encounter with the other which cannot injure, but it's also an encounter that cannot lead to fully to human life. So if we want to not get harmed, we also won't really experience the joys of human interaction as we could. The market can be a place where the other can be truly encountered, a place of blessing, as long as we open ourselves to gratuitous and not flee from being wounded by the other. So again, blessings are only going to come if we're open to the wounds, and we're going to get wounded, but then we will have more blessings that come from the authentic human encounter in business. Transforming the economy itself to renew social relations, business can promote unity among people of all social strata, culture, and ethnic origins. How can we do that? Bring unity through business. Let's not just renew business, renew social relations. We must overcome any we versus them logic, and the we of communion opens up to take on the whole of humanity with an openness to universal brotherhood. From Luigi Bruni, one of the best economists from Italy. We need to share a commitment to remaking the economic system, and every act at work is understood as a means to live out beliefs. So how do we live out our beliefs through business practice? This would transform the economy and renew our social relations. A 10th point here, people first. Human redevelopment as a top priority. Business, if it's to be a humanizing influence in society, must be rooted in a cultural soil that draws upon the graces that can structure business towards authentic human development. We have to train it like you train a tree or a vine to grow where you want it to grow, but we have to intentionally do that with our business. Without such an embedded reality, business eventually defaults to a narrow form of instrumental rationality focused only on efficiency and profitability. Why do we not care about others in business? Because business, if left to its own devices, will only care about profits. We, as human beings who are free and have reason and intellect and an understanding of love, can change the way that business is directed. But we have to choose to do it. An integration of deep culture and business of faith and work are possible. This is from Michael Naughton, a great theorist from the United States. Finally, values provide meaning and purpose for our economic activities. By seeing our business ventures as meaning-producing activities which enhance the state of human beings and improve the common good, contrary to what might be believed, economic phenomena have a primary interpersonal dimension. Business doesn't happen between squirrels or dogs or ducks. It only happens between humans. And so there is an interpersonal dimension to all economic activity, rooted in a conviction of that business has a set of relationship, or more accurately, a community, and the conviction that the purpose of economic activity, the production and distribution of goods and services, is to bring people together, to create community. So this is what we're looking for. How do we bring people together and create community through business? So again, this is just the list that we went through. The change, the differences. On the left-hand side, an alternative approach to economics and the practice of business versus business as usual. And this is what we're seeing all the way through. We don't just have a value-free mindset of business, but we really try to bring our values into business. We can pursue a both and. Transforming business as a way of being in the world. market and civil economy, efficiency and solidarity, economy and communion. If the market economy wants to function and have a future which is sustainable and human, it must allow for the development of behavior founded on these other principles. And that's what I'm suggesting to you here today, that we try to figure out how to do that. This is a brief bibliography. I would be more than happy to be in touch with any of you, and I thank you for your time, letting me share a few of my thoughts today. I hope you have a wonderful conference. Good luck in everything. All the best to you. Goodbye.